is going on, Rotogrinders? Dean here at Dean 7904. If you want to get all technical on me, that is the daily fantasy handle around the industry. 5:10 on the East Coast on the dot, 2:10 West Coast, 3:10 Grant and Mountain Time, 4:10 Tennessee time. Of course, at the time of the flagship show here at Rotogrinders, it is called Grinderslive. Joining me today, not messing around, 11 games, 3-man booth. Trying to think, Blender, Kentucky, is that Central Time? What's that? Central?
It's Eastern time. It depends on where you are in the state, but where I am,
I'm so
it's
angry
Eastern
about
time.
it. I don't know your precise location.
I think you've done this before. You've done this bit. People have seen this bit before.
This is not a bit. It's just that was popping in my head. I was like, I wonder where. Because you're not going to believe this. I don't think I've ever been to Kentucky before. Pretty certain I have not. I was going to go to the Kentucky Derby right before COVID hit, and then there was no Kentucky Derby. So
you weren't going to leave your house. We all know that.
No, I had plans and everything. We had a hotel.
Yeah, you had plans. You still weren't going to go.
Fair.
You can make plans and not leave your house.
This is I don't know why we're getting into it. It's a no pleasantry show. No pleasantries allowed.
Oh, well, why don't we just read injuries for 25 minutes then?
We have injuries. We'll do that in a second. No pleasantries. It's the NBA schedule, man. We got to even this out. We got to flatten this out. Look at going forward. It's not as bad, I don't think, but yeah, 11 games, 12 games, 13 games. It's really, I've had enough of this. Give me like 6 and 7 and 8 and we're good to go. We're here for the next hour. So if you guys are pre-members, you'll know that
Carol Baskins is doing a new docuseries.
Is it as a response to the upcoming Tiger King 2? We said no pleasantries and no nonsense, Grant. That's clearly nonsense.
How is that nonsense?
We'll talk about this later tonight while we're watching.
Evan Mobley.
Oh boy. Did you like that? You must have liked that Carol Baskin song, didn't you? I feel like that's something you downloaded.
Killed her husband, slashed him. Can't convince me it didn't happen.
Blender, it's enough, right? You don't need to see another Tiger King. I feel like I've seen my share.
I mean, I saw it when it came out on Netflix. I mean, when people were raving about it, I watched and I'm like, it's interesting. If it wasn't for the fact that everyone was locked in their house, I don't think it was that great.
Is that the same thing with the Jordan documentary? Because that's Jordan documentary got a lot of play for that. Well, I mean, it's Jordan and probably comparing Jordan to Carol Baskin. Probably not a fair comparison, but that same sort of idea, same sort of deal. Hey, it's an 11-game slate. No more nonsense. We'll talk all this stuff later on tonight while we're watching the NFL game. Hang out with us. Myself, Grant, producer Devin,
I'm going to be gambling.
SPK. And in between that, Blender, what are you doing tonight at 7:30?
I'm doing the NFL pre-lock show for Monday Night Football.
There you go. Do you want to give us a tease? Is somebody you like, or you're probably looking at the well, it's just a weird question to ask for Showdown because it's like, who do you like? Then you don't play him. Who don't you like? Then you do play him. And that's
right. We'll find out at 7:30. So maybe Grant could take over the overview of the slate.
I'm petting a dog.
Are you?
Yeah. We'll
talk about that later tonight. I'm excited for you. That's pretty awesome, actually. But we don't have time for this, Grant. I'm excited for you and your dog. It's gonna be a good conversation. Well, maybe we'll pick it out later on in our live stream.
I'm sure he'll come hang out for a little bit.
We're competing against the Manning Cast. I believe the Manning Cast is back tonight. Actually, Blender, I want to ask you this as far as the slate before we break down body parts and all that. Oh, Blender had to step away apparently. I actually have a good question for him, but let me ask Grant this because it's an 11-game slate. Before we dive in, break it down game by game and all that good stuff. Tell me this, Grant. 9 of the 11 games start at 8 o'clock or sooner. Then there's a 2-hour break. Portland, Toronto, 2 of the biggest potential injury things we're monitoring right now. We have Damian Lillard questionable. We have FVB questionable.
Did you not read body parts yet?
No, I have not done it just yet, but I'll let the people know for sure. Just like general slate strategy, the 2 of the most, and the other game, of course, is Chicago and the Lakers, which is really appealing as well. I guess what I'm asking is what are you leaving? We may or may not have news as far as Freddie VanVleet at 8:01. We may or not have news as far as Lillard at 8:01 as well. So what's the plan? Because obviously if Lillard doesn't play, McCollum gets a bump. Anthony Simons becomes an interesting cheapie. If FEV doesn't go, some stuff opens up there. So what is the thought process here as far as making lineups and while we're waiting for news?
I mean, it's not actually that hard. There's swaps. The main thing is it's an interesting spot where there are swaps over to other guys. Like if Fred VanVleet doesn't end up playing, who's the main beneficiary? Siakam, OG.
Well, there's not one direct swap. That's the thing is what they run.
Yes, there is.
Well, you think it's Goran Dragic?
No, DeRozan, Levine.
Wait, what? Oh, wait, you're talking. You switch games on me. What just happened? DeRozan and Levine are playing against the Lakers. Chicago.
Yes,
they're
I
Bulls.
know, and that's a half hour later. So there are direct swaps. Let's say
Oh,
you're
I see.
playing.
I see what you're saying. Instead of playing FEV, but yeah, okay, fair enough. I got you. I thought they were talking about the same game.
Yeah, and McCollum you can swap right over to OG. So just make sure you have your lineup set. Like, because well, I guess you can pretty much hope that one of Lillard or Van Vliet sit, and you can play either McCollum or OG. But I honestly don't hate McCollum regardless of this. Lillard sits or not. But like that's the main thing. Like, I'm not prioritizing things because there are direct swaps. If you really want to, you can also throw THT in there and throw THT and LeBron.
You're already playing him though.
Yeah. Well,
I think you're already playing him.
But
I
like maybe you have some ground to make up. Like, it gives you the
Mhm.
potential to make up some ground, throwing TNT and one of Davis or Westbrook in there, and then one other guy from that game, and figure out a nice little 3v3 swap that you can use if something ends up hitting, or if you have some room to make up.
All right, let's double people as far as who's in, who's out. We're gonna give the important stuff. Boston.
I was prepared not to say anything during the show because it was you and Blender. Now it's just me.
Well, yeah, Blender should be back soon enough.
He's just waiting for you to spend way too much time on injuries.
Is Blender back? I think he's back, right?
No,
Blender?
he's not.
Oh,
Just talk about injuries.
well,
So
when
I'm
you
taking
say
a
it like
5-minute
that, you're
break.
implying he's sitting right there, and I'm not watching the video, which I probably should be doing. Devin, just tell me my ear when he comes back. This is kind of broke. Jared Allen is doubtful tonight. He's in the very first game. Cleveland plays pretty tight rotations as is. They're also, already without Kevin Love, without Marketing, without Sexton forever. Lamar Stevens is also going to be out. So that Cleveland rotation is super, super thin. Assuming he does not get in the foul trouble of any sort, assuming this game stays fairly tight, we're looking at potentially like 40 minutes of the future MVP, Evan Mobley. We'll talk about that game soon enough. Jared Suggs is questionable for Orlando. Bradley Beal is still out for Washington, personal reasons. Denver, Will Barton was scratched like in the middle of the game last night. I guess he had warm-up issues.
Yeah, that was silly.
As he was warming up, we've seen that before in years. Of course, they start the game at 7:00 or whatever it is and lock it at 7, and officially the game doesn't start 10 minutes later. Something happened in warm-ups. He did not start. He did not play. He's got a back, and it's the back end of a back-to-back. So we're going to monitor that. I'm under the assumption he doesn't play tonight. We'll see. Stay tuned. Upgrade for DeAndre Ayton. His leg is now questionable. Eric Gordon is questionable with the groin. My Miami Heat, Jimmy Butler is questionable with an ankle. I assume he doesn't play. We'll see. We'll talk about it. Stay tuned. Mike Muscala is back from his rest last night. Derek Favors is going to rest tonight, and Darius Baisley is questionable with the foot. We already talked about FEV. Boucher is questionable to doubtful. Like, he said he's not going to play apparently. So like, if he says he's not going to play, he's not going to play. Precious Achiuwa is questionable with a shoulder. We mentioned Lillard's got that abdominal. He's questionable. Back end of a back-to-back. Kobe White expected to make his debut tonight for the Bulls. I don't expect he plays a ton of minutes, but kind of maybe like a 6th man or a 7th man. I assume that's how it goes down. I say 6th man because I'm thinking that we're going to stick with Alex Caruso back in the starting lineup as he started last time out with a revenge game versus the Lakers' first blood revenge game. And you mentioned THT on the other side. Talon Horton-Tucker, the price is not adjusted. He played the first game of his season last night. It is a backhand of a back-to-back. And, it wasn't a severe, soft tissue issue. It was a thumb. That's what was hurt. So I assume his minutes are stable. I assume they're fine. I'll assume he'll be starting again. And the price is $3K, which is goofy. Yeah. So general thoughts there, Grant, before we dive in and break it down game by game.
I'm gonna hit another bet.
What are you betting?
See that Caruso is at 3.5 assists. I guess we haven't gotten news on if he's starting. I assume they will. There's always a chance that they do something different.
I like that. Yeah.
I've been hitting that bet for a while at 3.5 when he's coming off the bench. So yeah, just seems like a decent bet here. But yeah, the overall view on the slate is obviously the injuries on the later games and construction of your lineups is going to be important with the ability to late swap, and late swap is obviously going to be important like it is most every single night. We got some value. We got some clear and obvious plays on the Magic that you absolutely want in your lineups.
Magic.
Not Magic. Wizards do Magic. So.
That is an amazing recovery, by the way.
Well, that's literally what my thought process was.
Is that a peek inside your brain? That was so weird how that worked out like that. Well, we mentioned Caruso played 39 minutes last game versus the Clippers last night and he shot terribly. and he still got there. He still smashed. Good stock guy as well too, and the price is not adjusted. So what we think is going to be a new situation. White is going to make his season debut, but I think Caruso is still going to play, I don't know, at least 30, possibly up to 37, 38,
Got
30
him
minutes
for
or so.
34.
Yeah. I mean, he seems like a pretty strong play tonight. I like your bet. All right, Blender, you got anything to say regarding? Welcome back, by the way. Hopefully, everything's all good in your house. You got anything to say regarding? I asked Grant about this, and what are you doing as far as 9 of the 11 games starting before 8 o'clock? Then there's 2 games starting 2 hours later, and those are the FEV questionable. We have Lillard questionable, and a really strong game as far as Chicago and the Lakers. You have any general strategies before we dive in and break this down game by game?
Well, if you look at our what if projections, which if you're a Rotogrinders premium member, you'd be able to see. So sign up, clicking on that link in that description, get $10 off your first month. Now, what I like doing is like seeing the situations that are happening in the later games and what if Lillard is out? What if Van Vliet is out? And see what the projections change would be. And from what I gather, the only one that becomes like a very big value would be Anthony Simons.
Yeah.
If Lillard sits, because he's 3,500 and he'd end up with a projection of like 29 points median. Like Van Vliet being out, I mean, it upgrades people, but it's not like, oh my God, I need to wait for that news. So like, to me, the only thing that is Anthony Simons. Like, yes, McCollum gets a bump. All these guys get bumped, but are there guys that have like 7X, 8X, 9X type medians? And Simons is the only one, but we have Taylor Horton Tucker, THT, in the late game, who's probably going to be very chalky. And like, even if Simons is a value, like that, he's not like one of those, like you got to lock him in for like 100% of your lineups type of thing. So to me, I'd build lineups less normally, but I mean, I think the story of this slate is the cheap point guard, shooting guard types, because we got like THT, Caruso, Cunningham projecting well. Dinwiddie is gonna be popular, probably more so on FanDuel than on DraftKings, but it'll still be owned. Rubio. So like, if you could get away from like some of these guys and find pivots at much lower ownership there, that's kind of where it would go. I think more people are going to be paying up in the small forward, power forward, center type spots. So like, yeah, so Simons, if he ends up playing over and Lillard sits, he'll be a much better value than like Caruso. I mean, he'll be cheaper than Cade Cunningham, obviously, but like you're using them in the place of those guys. You're not using them in like I probably wouldn't build lineups with like if you built lineups with Simons and you also played these guys, I'd be looking for those 4 to 6K level players that could outscore some of these chalkier kind of quote value pieces that may have decent medians, but maybe not the highest of ceilings.
All right, game by game, let's go ahead and break it down. This is gonna be kind of sort of how like, team totals, it can kind of sort of lie, because Boston at Cleveland 199.5 is a total. That's not a very appealing number. Cleveland slight dog here, 98 as far as their team total. They are 2.3-point favorites, dogs here to Boston. We're assuming that Allen is now going to be out. He was downgraded to doubtful.
And they just came out with game time decision.
Oh, oh, he's doing the whole deal. He's going to do the full circle, isn't he?
I mean, I hammered Mobley's overs as soon as that came out, and they've already gone up like 4, and I still think they're too low.
Yeah, he's good either way, probably. Like, oh, he's fine either way. And like, I don't know, he can't play any more minutes than 38, 39, 40, I don't think. We have him currently projected for 40 minutes. If Allen doesn't go, and I agree with this projection, we have Mobley sliding up to the 5 and Jetty Osman entering the starting rotation. We'll see how that goes. And I think Ricky Rubio would get a ton of minutes off the bench as well. But this rotation is really thin. Denzel Valentine, we saw getting some minutes, but I don't know how appealing he necessarily is in this slate. Grant, what say you as far as the Cavs? I'm pulling up our lineup HQ as far as our ownership here, and we're seeing that Mobley is going to be reasonably popular, which makes a good bit of sense. And again, under the assumption that Allen's out, he's still fine if he isn't.
What do you think they're going to do with the starting lineup?
Probably. I just said that. I just said you didn't hear me.
I don't pay attention to you.
I think Jetty Osman jumps in the starting lineup, and I think Mobley slides up to the 5.
Yeah, I mean, I figured he'd slide to the 5. I mean, they don't really have any other. For a team with this many big men, they have no big men anymore tonight.
Well, Love, Marketing are both out.
That was my point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, I think there is a chance that we see what's his name, Rubio, slide in the starting lineup.
I suppose that's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, but I mean, I think regardless, I'm only really going with Mobley and Rubio in this spot here. I mean, Mobley is too cheap considering he's probably going to get a boost in rebounds, probably going to get a boost in points, like not massive, but still like he was already a little bit underpriced. And now with this, he's drastically underpriced here. So I really like Mobley in this spot. And then Rubio, I think you can still take a shot on his 6K, regardless of if he's in the starting lineup or coming off the bench. He's still going to play a boatload of minutes. I could see him playing 35 plus in this, even if he comes off the bench, just because they'll take him, throw him in there fairly quickly, and then keep him in pretty much the entire game. But yeah, like those are the only two guys. I think Jetty is an interesting salary saver without Allen in here. But again, anytime we play Jetty, it's kind of always a crapshoot of how he's going to end up doing. I mean, he's been pretty consistent recently. Always has massive upside in any given matchup where he's getting the start for some reason, especially without Sexton in there where he takes up a little bit more usage. Those are really it. Like, I mean, Dean Wade at 3,200 could see an increase in minutes, but we have enough salary relief on the slate where it's probably not necessary.
Yeah, it's hard to get excited about Wade, even if he plays like 30 minutes or so, just not a very efficient fantasy point minute player. The usage is obviously not very high either. And the stuff we have later on in the slate is just better as far as I can tell. Hey, what up, chat? There's a poll in the chat that Devin just dropped for the people. Go ahead and answer that question if you don't mind. Playing NBA DFS tonight, which sites? FanDuel, DraftKings, both. Answer that. Sure, why not? And do hit the like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, all that good stuff too, and fire up for questions. We'll do our best to get to them at the end of the show. Blender, feel free to clean up whatever Grant did not talk about on Cleveland. You know, no reason to double down on it, and jump to the Celtics.
Well, I mean, I'm not a big fan of this game environment. It's one of the lowest totals on the entire slate. But I mean, there aren't that many high totals on the slate. But I would agree with Grant as far as, you know, the top plays on the Cleveland side would be Mobley and Rubio. But Mobley isn't, if Valen is out, there's no one on this slate that's a lock button. We don't have, we're not talking about Andre Drummond like we seem to do every Monday.
Yeah. Do you think you're fading Andre Drummond tonight, Dean?
I'm not going to play Andre Drummond tonight. Correct.
3 weeks in a row.
But I could see if people are, this rotation is going to be very thin. And if Osman and Rubio are, playing in the starting unit, like all these guys that are on their bench, like, are not scorers. So, like, taking a shot on Denzel Valentine doesn't seem like that horrible of an idea. He has a fairly high smash percentage for a 3K player at shooting guard, especially when people are going to be paying down at shooting guard. Playing a single digit owned Denzel Valentine over a guy like Caruso or other in that range. I mean, maybe you could take a shot. I mean, but I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of this game in general. From a ceiling perspective, I think good medians on the Celtics side. You pretty much got like Schroeder, Tatum. I mean, you could play Robert Williams. I guess Josh Richardson falls into that, like, play a $3,500 shooting guard small forward. That's going to be
lower. He's lower than most for me. He's lower than most for me as far as Richardson compared to all the other cheapies that are out there. Yeah.
I'm just giving just an option on. On an 11 game slate, you don't have to go that far off the board, but I wouldn't be a big fan of stacking this guy. Of playing like Mobley, Rubio, Tatum, and spending 9,800 in this game. It's just that with this total, like, I don't trust the Cavaliers game to be one where, this ends up being a 120 to 120 type of, barn burner.
Yeah. The counterpoint to that is that I don't know if it has to be, because he might be playing like 6.5 guys.
Bro, but that's the only reason. But I mean, I'm looking for ceiling for GPPs. I'm looking for ceiling results. I mean, if this game ends, 96 to 82 or something, like, I don't know if anyone gets there.
Okay. Schroeder still has a pretty good price on FanDuel. That's probably where he's best played. You got anything to add there as far as Boston, Grant? Again, 11 games, no reason to be redundant, but anything that you want to add different, any sort of takes from the Boston side? Like, you can play Tatum. He's probably not my favorite big spend. Robert Williams, we tend to like him when Horford's not there. Horford's back, so Williams to me, the ceiling goes down a little bit. Can you play him still? Of course. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, it's pretty much just Schroeder for me. I don't really have any interest in Tatum. Like, he's fine. He's not a terrible play. Just guys I'd rather go with. But Schroeder's been shooting the ball 20 times a game, over 20 times a game over the last 4. Like, the volume's in there. He's not really dishing it out much. He's in shoot first attitude over the last 3 games. So he's the main guy I want.
All right, let's move on to the next game. Next game on the slate is Sacramento and Detroit. 214.5 is the total. Detroit is 4.5 point dogs here. And we kind of referenced the name already. Blender mentioned them. Cade Cunningham is still too cheap on DK. Really, really good price. He's kind of working his way up, but I think 5.5K is still a bit of a discount. This guy probably lands at some point eventually in the 6s to the 7s at some point this season. We'll see. Stay tuned on that. All we care about is tonight and tonight only. Killian Hayes had an awesome game over the weekend. I don't think I care so much about that. Isaiah Stewart, wildly all over the place, but there is absolutely a ceiling when you consider his price. He's interesting for tournaments. That's basically what I have on Detroit. What do you have for me there, Blender?
I'm with you. I mean, this game is not, it's not really that appealing either. I mean, there's not really anyone on the Kings side that you really write home about. Maybe you could play Halliburton at 6,000, maybe. I mean, everyone else kind of doesn't project all that well. I mean, the Kings kind of spread everything out a bunch, and they're all either appropriately priced or maybe slightly overpriced. But if anything, like, if this game is a dud, I mean, I'd rather fade Cunningham in this spot. But I agree with you that Cunningham eventually is going to be like a $7,500 player. So if you, I mean, but he's going to be owned today. It's not like he's not going to be owned.
Yeah.
So because I'm not a big fan of playing guys on the King side, in GPPs, I'd be more inclined to fade. I'm still like, that's the theme of the day, is finding a way to get away from some of these shooting guard chalk plays and finding other plays that are 1 or 2 points projected different, but you're going to get dramatically different ownership. So, like, yeah, Cade Cunningham's in your cash load, but GPP wise, I think I'm going to stay away from this game.
Yeah, you're talking DK specific, I assume. You're talking about Cunningham as from a lineup building structure. Cunningham is a shooting guard. Caruso, we talked about as a shooting guard. THT is a shooting guard. Kevin Huerter, with the absence of Hunter. Didn't mention Hunter, the body parts. Hunter's going to be out for a couple months there for Atlanta, and also Bogdanovich is questionable too. So we might see Red Velvet get loose for 30, 35 minutes or so tonight for Atlanta, and his price is not adjusted to his new situation. Grant, by the way, if you're betting your props, Rashawn Holmes over on rebounds. I think it's an interesting one. Detroit, one of the worst rebounding teams in all of basketball.
Was it sitting at 7, 8.5, probably?
I saw it at 9.5, at least on Prize Picks. I don't know where it is as far as anywhere else. If you can get it lower than 9 or 8.5, you can get it something like that. I think Rashawn Holmes is an interesting play.
I mean, the main thing is always his minutes are kind of always in flux, depending on where the game's sitting at and what they are going to end up doing. So while he may have a large ceiling on rebounds, and this is a desirable matchup, he's kind of always hit or miss on these. It's pretty much a 50-50 shot based on how the game's actually going and if he gets into foul trouble. So I don't hate it.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm good. Oh, you always lose me money is the problem.
What's the number? What do you see it at?
It's at 9.5. RG projections has him at 9.88. He has had double-digit rebounds in 7 of his last 9 games or 12 games. So I don't know, slightly more often than not. But it's just a spot where, are we sure this game's going to stay close, and are we sure he's going to get run?
Probably. Why? I mean, the goofy things happen.
Fine, Dean. I'll throw money on it so I can blame you later tonight when it was all your fault.
Maytew's been getting some more run for Sacramento as well, but I think it's just not tonight is kind of my thought process, because there's 11 games and it just doesn't seem necessary, but just something to kind of monitor. What else do you have from a DFS perspective in this game, if anything? Does anything excite you? I'm sure you like Cunningham like everybody else, but yeah, any sort of stands you're taking here? Or it's just sort of like whatever, you'll get a couple shares here and a couple shares there, and that's that.
I mean, I don't mind making this a little bit of a game stack. I really don't hate Jeremy Grant, even though he hasn't shown a ton of upside. He's going up against Sacramento. It's a great spot for him. Could see him put up the ball a decent amount, and he's near 30% usage. He can have those ceiling games. He can get some peripheral stats. So he's a guy that would strictly throw into a game stack. And I mean, like Blender said, there's not really a ton I want to bring back with over on the Sacramento side. It's pretty much Halliburton, Fox, or Holmes. All are the guys that kind of give you a little bit of a ceiling for their price tag. So if you want to stack this up, I really don't mind Grant. Otherwise, Cunningham's really the only guy I want from this game.
That's pretty much where I'm at as well. New Orleans and Washington, 207.5 is the total. New Orleans is a 5-point dog here. I'm sorry, 3.5-point dog here versus the Wizards. With Ingram being back, a lot of their guys they're all taking incremental hits and they're all sort of priced up. But they thrived in the absence of Ingram, so nobody's really interesting. I think you can play Valanciunas in tournaments like always, and for sure, like you look at it, who's going to slow him down? Like Gafford is undersized. Well, Harrell and Gafford, they're not going to stop Jonas Valanciunas. That's most likely not going to happen, but the price is pretty much up there. And Grant, you kind of alluded to it too, as far as the Wizards, the absence of Bradley Beal. We've seen Spencer Dinwiddie 2 times this year, absolutely shine in his absence. They're not giving him like 34, 35, 36 minutes, but the price is not adjusted to this predicament without Beal and all the usage that goes his way. So one of the strongest plays in the slate, undoubtedly, is Spencer Dinwiddie. Our ownership stuff reflects it. 48% projected ownership on FanDuel, where he's 6.5K, which is just way, way too cheap. And then on DK, a little bit more subdued, 7.2K at 29.7%. Kuzma, the price has kind of somewhat adjust, but he's still interesting. And Aaron Holiday is the cheapie at 3.5K on DK. Grant, as far as priorities on the Washington side, is it Dinwiddie, Kuzma, Holiday, Harrell? Is that the order?
That is exactly the order. And yeah, Dinwiddie is one of my favorite plays on the slate still, even with the ownership, 6.5% increase in usage, like 8 extra points per 36. Yes, he's not getting all the minutes in the world, but he's going to be checking the ball while he's in there. I bet most of the over on his props, and all of them have gone up 1 to 2 points on it. Each of them. Brandon Ingram remains on a minutes limit. Great. That's good.
Well, he played 29 last time, I think. So I expect around 30. Didn't he play 29 minutes? I think that's what it was.
He put 29, like 30, 29. Yeah, 29 and a half minutes. So yeah, no, the problem is I already bet most of his stuff. He wasn't in play for DFS, but
gotcha.
None of the guys on New Orleans. That's the real problem with this game, is the potential of a blowout pretty much anytime New Orleans gets on the floor. And the fact that like all these guys are fantastic plays, Kuzma, Dinwiddie, Holiday, and Harrell, they're all going to be like, Holiday's just too cheap, but everyone else is going to be checking the ball. When you have that much of a use of a hole without Beal, it's just what has to happen. People have to score. Those guys are the ones that are just going to shoot a lot. So it's an interesting spot with all these guys, with ownership being what it is. But I think I'm just going to eat it and play them quite a bit.
Yeah, the Dinwiddie thing, it's a perfect storm, because not only is it like he's got this great usage inheritance with Beal being out, New Orleans second worst defensive team in all of basketball as well. I suppose they might increase a little bit, with more games played by Ingram, but still, it's just not a good defensive team. Jump in here, Blender. Do you like anybody in New Orleans? Is there anybody like you're excited about playing? Because you could sprinkle in Hart if you want to, and Jonas, Valanciunas. But for me, I don't think I'm playing anybody. And then, are you taking a stand on Dinwiddie? It feels like really good chalk, especially on FanDuel.
Oh, on FanDuel, definitely. Okay, like on FanDuel, play Dinwiddie, but I don't think he's necessary on DraftKings. He's probably, like I said, it's probably in your cash lineup, but I think he's going to be over-owned in GPP. I'd much rather take a shot on the other guys. I'd much rather take a shot on Kuzma, on Holiday, and Harrell than play chalky Dinwiddie in the point guard spot. I'm trying to, like I keep on saying, trying to get different in that point guard, shooting guard spot to the rest of the constructions. And the Pelicans, now that Ingram's back, I mean, all these guys were priced, he was out for 2 weeks. So their prices started coming up to reflect what they were. And now Ingram's even on 30 minutes, he's going to take away enough from everyone on this team that these guys really should, like Valanciunas should now only be like 8,300, and NAW should be like 5,400, and Devontae Graham should be 5,500. So like they're overpriced. Doesn't mean they can't hit a ceiling at those prices, but if Dinwiddie cash play, but I think that the other guys, I'm more likely to take a shot on the other guys, and that's direct leverage off of Dinwiddie. So Dinwiddie gets into foul trouble, right? He doesn't have a good game, and it's Kuzma and Holiday and Harrell that's picking up the load.
Harrell's a tricky one because he's really expensive, and it's hard to project his minutes beyond more than like 25. But he also averages like 1.3 fantasy points per minute. So, and like we've seen games where he just goes ballistic out there in 27 minutes. So I imagine he's somebody you embrace in tournaments, because it's just a hard price when you consider his minutes are sensitive.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the whole point of GPP. Take a risk. Yeah. If Gafford, gets into foul trouble and Harrell plays 33 minutes, I mean, he crushes, right, at 6,500. So like that's what you're playing for. It's not, you're not playing for a median outcome. You're playing for an outlier.
All right, let's move on. 11 games, keeping it going. Next game on the slate, O-Town Orlando in Atlanta. 216 is the total. Atlanta 11-point favorites here. We talked about Hunter being out for multiple months. Bogdanovich is questionable. If he doesn't go, I'd imagine Herter potentially gets loose. He's another one of those shooting guards, right? We kind of referenced there, Blender. I'm not really sure where you have him. You're probably just basing it off of ownership. I imagine it's sort of is that what you're going to do as far, there's a pile of good shooting guards and just sort of flip whatever the ownership is and go the reverse?
Yeah, pretty much. I think Herter fits the bill of, based on our current ownership projections, he's going to be one of the lower of the lower owned of the value shooting guard small forward. So I think I'm more likely to take a shot on him or take a shot on Trae Young, because I think he's going to be lower owned. People are going to be plugging in Dinwiddie. They're going to be plugging in other point guards, and Trae Young is point guard only on DraftKings. So yeah, I think I'd take a shot on this. Capella is good, is okay on DraftKings, but I think very good on FanDuel.
Yeah.
On FanDuel, he's like the highest salary adjusted plus minus player in our projections. So I think you're playing Capella in at center. Center only, you can only play only one center on FanDuel. But he's okay on DraftKings. And then on the Orlando side, I think they're mostly priced efficiently. I guess you could play Cole Anthony or Wendell Carter Jr., but on an 11-game slate, like I'm more likely to play these guys if I'm playing Atlanta play. Like if I'm playing Trae Young, then I kind of want to play the other side of the game. But Orlando's like they're there, like they're neither bad nor good plays. They're just not anything. They're just met on an 11-game slate.
Or if then suggests that like RJ Hampton gets a bump if Suggs doesn't go, but again, 11-game slate. I don't know how much I need over RJ Hampton, but we haven't projected up to 21 FanDuel points and 21 DK points, 20 FanDuel points if we see no Suggs. But yeah, that does not feel like enough for me to get excited. I was looking for if Bogdanovich doesn't play, we do like 4 or 5 a day, depending on, that one's not laid out, but maybe Reddish gets a bump if you're looking for a dart, if we see no Bogdanovich, but again, kind of ambitious. Grant, jump in here. What do you have for me?
I mean, kind of on the same page as Blender. Trae Young's a fine tournament dart. Herter's too cheap. Capella's far too cheap over on FanDuel. But yeah, the Orlando side, I think I'd have a little bit of interest in Cole Anthony as a bring back if Suggs ends up missing. I mean, Suggs may not have been great this week. He really doesn't get a lot done in there, but the usage is there with him. Like he shoots the ball decent. He just has not shot well pretty much all season long. So, I mean, it's Cole Anthony, and then that's just as a bring back over for Orlando.
Next game, I think is a quick one. Indiana versus the Knicks.
No interest.
Yeah, okay. 213 is the total. Indiana and New York. New York 4-point favorites. Noel was questionable. He was not in the body parts, but he was questionable last I saw for what it's worth. But like, yeah, the Knicks are having issues with their starting lineup, and I don't want to play the whack-a-mole like Kemba Walker versus Derrick Rose game, and I don't even know how much I gained from it. RJ Barrett's just so, I mean, whatever. He's cheap enough in some places where I guess, but I'm just not somebody that likes RJ Barrett, but why not? I guess if he's cheap enough, you can throw that dart. But yeah, Grant's already said his piece in this game, and I probably said too much as well too. Of course, you can play some of these plays, but really nothing appealing for me, Wonder. But give me a tournament perspective. Do you like anybody from a tournament perspective in the Indiana New York game?
Brogdon at 8,200 at point guard. I'm looking for those guys that are closer to Dinwiddie in that point guard spot, but he's meh. I mean, like it's not like, oh my God, I got to play. It's like he's there, right? He's efficiently priced. I mean, we have him essentially at like just neutral as far as salary adjusted plus minus, and same for like RJ Barrett on the Knicks side, like neutral, like fairly like low, mid to low smash percentage. I mean, you can play them, but this is one of the least appealing games on the slate from a projection and just rotation standpoint. So of course that means this goes to triple overtime. Yeah,
I mean, I was just curious if you had a different take. It's because I know you like to play, leverage and tournaments and factoring ownership and all that stuff makes sense. But even still, like it's hard to get. I don't know if I just rarely play Randall. Like he's always sort of priced where he should be. He's fine and he gets there some nights, but I don't think I'm playing him again tonight. Just sort of the way it goes as far as New York. let's move on. My Miami Heat in OKC tonight. 207 is the total. Miami is a 9-point favorite. So Jimmy Butler's questionable. My guess is purely a guess. I don't think he plays. Road game and in OKC. Like, it just feels like another game. Like, let's just give him
That means
another
he's
day.
gonna play since you said it.
Well, they don't, he might, and they don't play tomorrow. So let's give him a couple extra days, right? But no teams tonight on the front end of a back-to-back. The back end, we have 8: Atlanta, Denver, Houston, Phoenix, Portland, the Lakers, Chicago, who play against each other, and this OKC team we just referenced on the back end of a back-to-back. I'm pulling up our if-then stuff, Grant, and this is obviously a big deal. If Jimmy Butler doesn't play, we get a boost of 14% boost for Bam Adebayo. All of a sudden, he would get 46 DK points projection, 46 for FanDuel as well, and he becomes, for me, one of the top plays in the slate. That's not where it's at right now. You know, you can't project Butler to be out until he's officially out. You know, we also see Hero getting a bump, 39 for FanDuel, 38 for FanDuel, 39 for DK. Lowry, a little bit of a bump. But I'm really excited at the prospect of playing some Bam, especially if like Butler gets rolled out late. We'll see. 8 o'clock this game. That's where I'm at. If Butler plays, I don't think I have anybody in Miami. It's just they're all sort of back. You know, usage is dispersed appropriately, and their prices have shot up. So, I mean, Bam could still get there, sure, but I'm pretty sure nobody's a necessity for me. Thoughts?
Yeah, no. If Butler's in there, I'm fading this game. Like maybe one game stack, but realistically, I got a little bit of interest in SGA regardless. But like, if Butler doesn't end up playing, this is a very, very good spot here. I mean, Duncan Robinson becomes a guy that you can absolutely still play at 4.7K. Hero becomes a fantastic play, and Bam becomes a fantastic play. Like, Hero's going to play a boatload of minutes, get a boatload of usage, and he's drastically underpriced. Bam, big increase in usage, drastically underpriced for his role without Butler in there. I mean, you can wait and see what the news ends up bringing. And I mean, even Kyle Lowry's probably in play. Like, everyone's in play without Butler in here. So it just depends on that news. And if Butler's ruled out, I will prioritize Hero, Bam, and then probably Lowry, then Robinson in that order.
Do we care if Baisley doesn't play? He's currently questionable, and I'm looking at the bumps, and we're putting Roby down in the rotation, not getting enough minutes to make any noise.
It's not going to make a big difference.
They have like a never-ending list of guys, basically. Yeah, I just, you know, some people you
never-ending list of interchangeable guys.
Yeah, like
outside of SGA.
Basically, like Dort is kind of a constant, but you know, he's priced where he basically should be. Your thoughts there, Blender? Jump over to OKC, and you know, Miami, tough matchup, back to back. We'll see.
If Butler plays, there's maybe a less interesting game than the Pacers Knicks game. Just like there's no one in our OKC, they're all overpriced. They all, like, no one plays minutes other than like SGA essentially. And on the Miami side, I'm not thrilled about playing Bam regardless. The guy, Tyler Hero at 6,600, even if Bam is in, is a fringe like GPP play.
You mean Butler's in, right?
Right, if Butler's in, right. And Hero, even if Butler's in, Hero is viable and would be like 2% owned. So like, I wouldn't be opposed to plugging Hero in, because he's in that spot, like kind of where Dinwiddie would be. Plug him in and wait and see. And if you're worst case scenario, oh my God, you're playing Tyler Hero, and that's still fine.
Yeah.
So like I don't mind playing for the upgrade of, like, you plug him in, and if Butler's out, then obviously that makes your lineup, you know, the projection goes up on Hero by like 8 points. So like it makes him actually a really good play for this slate. So, and same Duncan Robinson, I guess, is in the range. There's only so far up he could go. His usage will go up, but his minutes aren't going to move much. But if Butler's in, like, this would be a game I X out.
Well, I mean, if Butler plays, Duncan Robinson's a guy that might not close. Like, he's the guy that might get kicked out with Hero closing as well. So just,
well, Butler plays, you just X out. I forget that this game exists.
Fair enough. Fair. I just wanted to, I think Robinson's a bad play if Butler is
playing. Right. Hero is viable even if Butler doesn't play, but Duncan Robinson is only viable if Butler sits.
Denver, Dallas, 209 is the total. Denver is a 6-point dog here in Dallas. The greatest fantasy point player. I think Jokic is just incredible. The reigning MVP. He's playing better this year than he did last year. Do everything. And of course, there's no Murray in this team. Barton is doubtful. I'm expecting he doesn't play, but who knows? Stay tuned on that. Back end of a back-to-back. He got scratched late, like basically during warmups in that game last night. Yeah, how much are we prioritizing Jokic here, Blender? Because he's just incredible. He's expensive, though. He's going to cost you, but we have the value to make it work if you want to make it work.
I think you probably play. I mean, you could play him in cash games if you're playing that type of construction. I think he's perfectly fine. But 11-7, I mean, you're going to need a very big game to win GPPs with that score. Like getting 60 points from him at 11-7 is just not going to cut it. And GPPs on an 11-game slate. So, I mean, we currently have his ownership at around 17.5%. I'm not a big fan of the game in general because both sides of the game, I mean, it's the main players. Jokic, Luka, Porzingis. And it's never fun rostering Kristaps Porzingis.
He's better this year than you think, though. And he's been improving. He's been playing more minutes, but I hear you. And you're right. Dallas is 2 players. 2 players
Right.
and 2 players only.
Right. So it almost feels like if I want to play Jokic, I want to play Luka also. Like it puts you in that perspective of you're now playing 2 11K players in your lineup and then just trying to find 3K guys that could go for 30. And I just on 11 game, I'm not a big fan of stars and scrubs on 11 game slate. I'd much rather go with more of a balanced build. So maybe Jokic and Luka, you know, I don't get to in many lineups because of that. I think they're fine. I think they're fine individually, obviously. But it almost feels like if one goes off the other, like I want them both to have a big. I mean, for Jokic to have a 75-point game, I mean that means Dallas stayed in it, and most likely Luka's having a 60 to 70-point game.
I'd probably pair Jokic with Porzingis if I'm doing that. I hear
really. You don't think they vulture each other? I mean, wouldn't think like rebounds and fouls or whatever. I mean, they're both going to be around the paint.
Yeah, who says there has to be fouls? There doesn't have to be foul trouble.
I'm imagining fouls.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's all sort of baked in. And of course, if your guy's in foul trouble, who cares? It's over. Like, close the laptop and
Yeah, but I want to play them together. That's why you don't play them together.
I'm saying Jokic and Porzingis.
Right.
They're on different teams.
Right, but one could foul the other guy. They're both going to be competing for rebounds.
Okay.
Right. If Jokic has a 20-20 game, like that's taking away rebounds that Porzingis would get. I mean, Porzingis is not technically their center, but Jokic is not technically their center. Jokic is essentially like some type of a point guard center. All I'm saying is that there's some negative correlation between Jokic and Porzingis based on their position on the court. So I'm less inclined to play them together.
All right, jump in here, Grant. What do you want to add to the conversation? And I think an interesting potential cheapie is Bones Highland. If Barton
don't try to make Bones Highland happen. Everyone's trying to do that.
Team's been trying to do that every game.
And guess what? It's been happening. He said career high. Grant, I've actually been right on the arrival of Bones Highland. It's happening, and they need him because the rest of the pieces in this Denver team is pretty awful. 12 points career high 3 games ago. Before that, 15 points career high. Last game, 18 points career high. The minutes from 22 to 21.
So he's going to have 21 this game.
I don't know.
Based on how
he's not a 1.5 point fantasy point per minute player.
He does other things though. He averages more than a fantasy point per minute. It's just it's not.
Yeah, in 20 minutes. I mean, and like how much of a sample
the
size
Portland game was a blowout.
No, for his career, he's averaging more than a fantasy. I know it's not a long career, but this is what we have so far. He's averaging more than a fantasy point per minute.
Yeah, suck it, Blender.
What, shooting 50% for 3-point range and getting 2 steals? I mean,
oh my god, why do you want to hate? We don't have time to hate on Bones Highland, but he's legit. It's coming. This is more minutes are coming, if anything. Like guys gonna get kicked out of the rotation whenever he comes back. You can take your Faco Campazzo or whatever, any of those random dudes. It's Bones season now. He's not getting 35 minutes, but he finally won over Malone, I believe. I just pulled up our court. On
an 11-game slate, I'm going to take a shot on a guy that may max out at 20 minutes.
Well, no,
may max out at 30 points.
That's a weird phrasing. May max out. He could potentially play 27 minutes, and he averages on the season 1.06 DK points. Same deal with FanDuel, and again, I don't know how much you need him, and the price is still down. He's more interesting than who was the other guy?
He's more interesting than Austin Rivers. Okay, yeah. That's correct. Yeah.
There was somebody else that we were talking about a 3K room. I will take Bones Highland over Josh Richardson. How about that? You mentioned Josh
You're not
Richardson.
saying much. I'd probably take him over Josh Richardson also.
You mentioned him though.
Yeah.
Because we had to mention someone from that.
No, you don't.
No.
You can just say I don't want it. It's like no, don't even throw the name out into the ether.
Okay, well, Bones is probably closer to Josh Richardson than
I've never said this
PhD.
before, but I'm giving Dean the W.
Grant, what do you want to add?
Nothing. I mean, I'm kind of on the same page as Blender.
What? Wait, I got
you're on the
W
same
and
page as me, yet you're giving Dean the win?
No, not about Bones.
Okay,
Bones
so
is the only
everything
thing I'm
but
on a
Bones.
different page.
Right.
But
No,
like
but no
for
Bones,
Jokic, Porzingis,
no Bones,
Luka,
no harmony, right?
Yeah, I
Did
mean,
you watch the
Porzingis
SNL
would be a
bit?
little bit more interesting if he weren't 23% projected owned. Like, I don't really want to play him at that ownership. Like,
If we were Bone Thugs and Harmony, who would be the Bone? So Dean is the Bones, I'm the Thugs, and Grant's the Harmony.
Did you watch the SNL bit over the weekend? I imagine you did.
No, I haven't watched SNL until it's never been funny. I'd say since it's been funny, it's never been.
Oh, come on. Man, you know what, Blender? You're a hater. Never been funny. It's never been funny. It's
we
ridiculous.
should probably speed things up, guys.
We should. I have many things to say about that, but we have no time to talk about it. It's a ridiculous statement. Houston, Memphis, 219 is the total. Houston is a 12-point dog here. They're terrible at basketball. It's also from a pace perspective. No, wait. Oh, never mind. Not worth getting into right now. All right. So we have Memphis, John Morant, a fabulous play, but he's super, super expensive. Triple J, who knows about those minutes? They're always volatile. You catch him on the right night, he's super interesting. They talked about potentially changing that Houston rotation, the coach. Who knows what's going to happen there? Maybe they add Sengun. Maybe Tice gets kicked out. Grant, what do you have for me?
Ja is one of my favorite plays on the entire slate going up against Houston. A below average defensive team playing at the fastest pace in the league. Morant can absolutely have a massive game here. If you want to bring it back with anyone, then that becomes a little bit more interesting. There's a lot of different ways that this game could end up with Houston staying close, but not actually having any guy drastically exceed tournament value on this big of a slate. So I really just like Morant here. Like, he is an absolutely fantastic play here. I don't think many people are going to play him. 10K is a big price tag, but he can absolutely have a massive gain in this spot here. So Josh Richardson and Horford available to play. Not surprised by that. But yeah, like on the other side of the game, Christian Wood, if you want to bring it back, maybe Porter, if you want to bring it back, and then Triple J's in there is a all right play. I've just kind of given up on playing him.
Brooks kind of mucks things up for that Memphis side too, because it's just, they have a bunch of dudes and it's hard to predict what
Bane would be interesting if it weren't for Brooks. Like, Melton might be a little bit more interesting, but yeah, with Brooks in there, it kind of takes away from everything else.
Bane season's over, I think. You know,
I love Bane season. I made a lot of money on it, but
jump in here, Blender. By the way, yeah, Nerlens Noel officially ruled out. Herter starting for Hunter, no surprise there. And Horford and Richardson are available. Blender, what do you want to add? Because yeah, Houston.
Would you rather have Bones for 20 minutes or slow-mo for 23 minutes?
Well, they're different prices. Slow-mo's more expensive.
Right,
Suggs
but I mean,
rolled out.
filling a power forward slot, cheap power forward spot. And we have
I'd rather play Bones
news
at
that
his price.
Jalen Suggs has been ruled out, by the way.
Do we care?
Not really. It's not going to what RJ Hampton is just a
Yeah.
marginal play now. It doesn't really do much. All I'm saying is that like Bones Highland, if you're gonna say 20 minutes, give me 30 points. Like we've seen Kyle Anderson do that before, so why
Yeah.
can't it be Kyle Anderson?
Well, because Denver's rotations are much thinner than Memphis's rotations right now. Memphis is really healthy, but I hear what you're saying. I understand your point.
Minutes are minutes.
What do you have to add as far as Jaws is so expensive, but like this Houston matchup's great. They play it, I think the fastest pace in the league. They turn the ball over a ton. KPJ is super reckless, but like it's going to cost you.
Yeah, that's why I'm not going to play. I'm not going to pay it.
3 more games. Phoenix, Minnesota, 222.5 is the total in this game. Phoenix is a 4-point favorite. And much like the New York, like I don't play a lot of Phoenix unless somebody's out. Now we're expecting Ayton to be out. The price has adjusted to guys like Kaminsky, McGee, not as much. We saw McGee finally get loose and have that JaVale game a lot of people have been paying for of late. Stay tuned as far as Ayton. I assume he's not going to play because he hasn't played for like 5 or 6 games, but whatever. But Blender, this is one of those games where the Phoenix side, especially, when do you play the Suns? They're just all sort of fine.
I think you can play McGee or Kaminsky, I guess. Obviously now Kaminsky is way more expensive than McGee, so you'd rather play the McGee side. I think Paul is, I think Crowder is, and I guess he's there, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in like, if I'm a big fan of playing like Pat Beverly when he's not chalky, right? Because Pat Beverly has a very wide range of outcomes because he tends to get, points across the board, steals, blocks, assists. I mean, you can obviously get ejected, but like he's in that $4,100, right? We're in that range, that 4K shooting guard, point guard type of thing. And if I want to play like McGee as a cheap center on DraftKings, pair him with Beverly, and then now you could build your lineup pretty much any way you want. Because I think we have Beverly in single digit ownership. And yeah, he has a very low floor. I get it. I get Pat Bev could easily just he could play 30 minutes and only score 8 fantasy points. I get
100%.
that. Right. But his ceiling is much higher for his price. So I think he fits in that range of GPP, don't play the value play guy and replace him with Pat Beverly. I think that D'Angelo Russell is okay. Naz Reid, I mean, would you rather have 20 minutes of Bones Highland or you rather have 18 minutes of Naz Reid? I mean,
Well, Naz Reid's a center. There's bigger opportunity cost of his position. So
well, he's power forward eligible.
Is he? Well, he's also questionable, isn't he? He was supposed to be in the body parts. I am
Right. I mean, I'm not saying that he's a play. I'm every game we go through, I'm going to give you someone that you're going to be like, well, how do you play that guy? And I'm going to tell you he has 1.7 fantasy points per minute and whatever. And like, he'll get there in 18 minutes. So if Bones is a play, that guy has to be a play.
And JaVale too. It's like he's center only, and like the center, there's an opportunity cost, and like he's 4.2K on DK Blender. How many points do you need out of McGee to feel good about rostering him?
35.
Yeah.
In GPP, obviously. I
mean, 30's fine, but yeah.
Yeah, 30's fine, right? Like I'm looking for 30 to 35. Yes.
Grant, what do you want to add here?
Nothing. We don't have much time.
Good. Toronto and Portland, the 2 games that are 2 hours later after that Phoenix Minnesota game. And this is a lot of if then stuff. I'll throw it to you, Grant. But yeah, if Lillard doesn't play, McCollum gets a bump. The biggest bump is Anthony Simons. He is kind of scoring centric, but he will be chucking. I presume he'll jump in the starting lineup. And if the FDV doesn't play, there's really no clear and obvious guy. Also, Precious is questionable too. And also we have Boucher is questionable to doubtful as well. But we have a revenge game for Gary Trent, who's been fabulous this year. He's been awesome this year, but the price does reflect how well he's been. Bumps for Barnes, bump for OG, bump for Pascal, but like they're all kind of priced where they should be. And yeah, Grant, are we getting excited if FEV's out? Like there's something that jumps off the page.
Okoro is starting. Rubio, Garland, Okoro, Wade, Mobley.
Rubio season.
And Gary Harris is starting for Jalen Suggs. Do not play. Whatever you do, don't play Gary Harris. Please don't do it.
What's his ceiling? Like 23? Maybe?
That's high. I mean, that's
if he goes 3 for 3 from beyond the arc.
Everything cracks his way. He can put up 23 fantasy points
in 40 minutes.
Yeah, I don't want to play Gary Harris on 11 game slate, no less. And I wouldn't be surprised if Jetty Osman closes over Okoro. I would just note that too. But yeah. I think Osman's still interesting, but like on the outside looking in. Grant, Toronto, Portland, we got to move.
I mean, mostly depends on the injuries. If everyone ends up playing this game, I'm probably mostly out outside maybe a few tournament shots on guys like Van Vliet, McCollum, OG. If Lillard ends up missing, lock it or play a bunch of McCollum. If Van Vliet ends up missing, then I do like OG and I like Siakam.
Blender?
I think you could still play Anthony Simons in your lineups, and if Lillard plays, he's still not hard. He's not horrible. I mean, like we have him, Anthony Simons, 23 minutes, 19.82 fantasy point median. That's right in that Bones Highland range.
I was just going to ask. I was waiting for it.
You were waiting for it?
Well, but I mean, he's scoring dependent. He's scoring dependent, and he's got to get the ball in the bucket. Like he can, but if he doesn't, he's in trouble.
Right. But all I'm saying is that at his current projection with Lillard in, he's a Bones Highland play. And if you like Bones Highland, why not play Simons? But if Lillard's out, Simons becomes one of the best value plays on the slate because he'll end up playing, 34 minutes instead. So like, I'm not opposed to just putting Simons into some lineups. And if Lillard plays, it's like, that's not that big of a deal that he's still in.
he could still get there. There's still a path, but
Right.
it's not the direct, you're taking the scenic route as opposed to the direct path. Chicago and the Lakers, 216.5 is the total. It's high, 216.5 and tight. The Lakers currently a half a point favorite. I'll take the Bulls. They're going to win this game. A revenge game for Lonzo, revenge game for Caruso, first blood revenge game. I presume he's going to draw the start once again. Kobe White expected back, but don't get excited over that. THT, of course, on the other side, uber chalk, 3K still minimum on DK. Looks like a really solid play. Grant, what do you have for me?
THT is far too cheap. Caruso is far too cheap, especially if this is in the starting lineup. DeRozan and Levine are fine GPP plays. Leverage in there. They're obviously taking a whole bunch of usage. Westbrook and Davis are both pretty solid overall tournament plays. I don't hate Melo, but that's it. We need to get to questions.
Let's see what Blender has to say. What are your thoughts as far as Anthony Davis?
Our projections don't like him. He has a 2% smash rate at 10.4K. So he's
I
there.
don't get that. That's a little too low for me.
It seems like a little too low, but that's what our projections say. I mean, he's there. You could play him. Sure, you could play him. Why?
Are you playing Caruso THT? Are you embracing that chalk?
Yeah, why not? I
Well,
think.
because
Let me ask you.
and you're playing tournaments. So
No,
yeah.
well, I mean, he could be in a lineup as long as I'm playing other guys, and I mean, it's not just one thing. Let me ask you a question, Dean.
Yeah.
Would you rather have 20 minutes of Bones Highland or 19 minutes of Tony Bradley at 3,500?
Oh man, that's a tough one because you think they would need the size of Bradley in this matchup, and he's generally a pretty good historically a good fantasy appointment player. But it's so hard to trust how much minutes he's going to get. And they've kicked DeAndre Jordan out of this, at least last game. We saw Carmelo start, and I assume that's the way it's going to be going forward as far as the Lakers. And there's still Howard. The Lakers always have a big boy out there, right? Either Davis or Howard. So I think Bradley gets some run. I don't know. Is my short answer. But he's a center. So by default, I'll take Bones because I think the opportunity cost of losing a center is greater than the opportunity cost of losing a small forward. There's my answer.
I'll probably agree with you, but I just want to highlight the fact that we could get some Bones Highland plays in like every game by going by like 20 minutes. If you're very efficient, maybe you could score
Lightning
30
round of
points.
questions.
Yeah, we got some questions. I'm going to fire them off in just a second. Does OBJ go off tonight? That's a football player. I don't know if he goes off. Blender will be talking about that at 7:30, and myself and Grant will be watching that. Hang out with us. Hang out in the chat. Then we can talk about expand about anything. FanDuel tournament, Alex Caruso versus Bones Highland. I think Caruso's a better play than Bones Highland. It's just straight up, and that's it. He's a better play, and he's more expensive too, I believe. I answered the Bones question. Thoughts on Robert Williams? What do you have for me, Grant? Because
Not a huge fan tonight.
That's kind of where I'm
Robert
at.
Williams is a much better play on FanDuel than on DraftKings.
Almost every single night because of stocks.
FanDuel cash, Powell, Brooks, or Dort for last piece. Also Herter or THT. I'm not playing
With the
cash,
first question, why do you have either in?
Yeah, why is Powell, Brooks, and Dort the guys? Herter and THT are better dollar for dollar plays. I'm guessing they're cheaper and they have money left over. Maybe delegate those funds.
I mean, but you don't even have to play THT on FanDuel at all.
No, he's a much better play on DK. That is correct. We should have pointed that out. He's fine on FanDuel, but 3K on DK means a lot, and he's a much better play there as well. Blender 6K Halliburton on DK. I'm not really into that.
He's there. I mentioned him when we went over that game. If he's there, he's there. He's efficiently priced. I mean, he's not overpriced.
Duarte's out. Do we care?
Not much. Everyone's a little bit better play, but still not a great play.
Favorite center options, Grant.
Joker is obviously one of the best spend ups. Capella is one of the better ones over on FanDuel. Mobley, he's also forward eligible. Fantastic. McGee's a good cheap center. Harold, good upside center. Bam's the best center on the board if Butler's ruled out.
Yes, I would also add Christian Wood, but I love all that. I like that list. But I think Christian Wood's a really solid play. I think that game can stay reasonably tight. Any fragility to Caruso's minutes with Kobe White back? I think he still plays 32 or so. Like White, I'm guessing doesn't play more than 20. That's my guess. I don't know. Does anybody have a thought on that? Is that where you're at as well?
I don't see with this first game. I don't think Kobe. How many minutes could he be taking away from him? I mean, like if Caruso starts, he's going to be Then we have his projection. Where the hell is it? I mean,
I think at 32, I want to say is what we have him at.
Right, 34. We have him 34. What's the worst case scenario? He plays 30.
Yeah,
I mean, even if we gave him a 30-point projection, he's one of the better projected values. So the fragility of plus or minus 4 minutes, even I still have no problem playing.
Spencer Dinwiddie is one of the best cash pieces on FanDuel. I saw somebody asking about cash thoughts. That's one place to start. And THT. As far as the big spends, I don't think there's a clear and obvious big spend for cash. But like Jokic on DK, I think you can make that work with the THT price. If you want to get the Davis, sure, that's fine too. But I just feel better about Jokic. Grant, we got to step aside and get out of here and make way for crunch time. Again, later on, 7:30. You got Blender, you got Chief talking some football, talking some showdown. And then we're going to be hanging out from 8 o'clock to the end of the football game, talking about, watching the game live. Hang with us. We're live streaming. Grant, final thoughts as far as this slate?
I like gambling.
See that and raise it, Blender.
Bones Highland, 70 points.
When he wins Rookie of the Year, which I hope he doesn't, because we may have some money bet on Mobley, second in Rookie of the Year, he's going to be good, man. Bones is legit.
He's going to get 70 points in 8 minutes on the floor. That's what apparently that you're expecting to have.
He's hitting those. Remember the rock and jock, the old 25-point shot? That's what he's going to bang a couple of those.
And I think it's just going to be him and Luka just passing it to each other for like 3 minutes.
Steal.
Each 25 steals and 25 turnovers.
We do appreciate y'all interacting. Apologies, we cannot get to all your questions because it's an 11-game slate. And we had to talk about Bones Highland for 30 minutes. It's very important. But do hit the like button, subscribe, turn on notifications for when future shows are going out. It'll tell you that the football show is going down at 7:30. You guys are premium members. You got Andy Means and Kevin Roth taking you guys straight up to lock. That's the show. That was Grant. That was Blender. Devin producing. That was basketball. I was Dean. We're out of here. Oh!